Welcome to the Branded Assets Podcast, your place for hot takes on business, brands, and billion-dollar gossip. I'm your host, Kate Bouchard. Thanks for being here. Welcome to today's Rich Girl Rundown episode, where me and my co-host Ada break down the latest in business, brand gossip, and billion-dollar deals. We've got a good one for you today. We're covering everything from Frida's recent marketing firestorm to Airbnb alternative Kindred's $125 million raise. Now, we were originally supposed to record this in person at the studio over the weekend, but we had some sickness go through our various households, as is with, having kids at home. So a bit of a different format today.
Everyone's healthy now, though, so and I didn't get your family sick.
Yeah, we both had a lot going on. I mean, you were in Toronto recently.
I was, yeah. So every 5 years, I do a one-on-one trip with each of my girls, and I started it when my oldest turned 5. I took her to Vegas, and so we were just in Toronto with my youngest for her 10-year trip.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, just such an awesome few days. We spent, the better part of a week there, and I got to show her around. I have kind of my, routine when I go to Toronto, places I like to stay, places I like to eat, and she just loved it. So, yeah, we
That
had a
is
great time.
so cool. That is so cool. I love the idea of my son being old enough to enjoy those kind of days with him. And my parents used to do, although not trips, we would do Katie days where
Mm.
my dad would take me out of school and we'd do whatever I wanted all day long. I just have such great memories of that. So I think that's so neat that you created those shared experiences with your daughters and continue to.
Oh, I love that. I feel like you still do Katie days. You just do them
Yeah,
yourself.
that's true. Yeah, Katie days all the way. And then we also had International Women's Day over the weekend. Did you do anything for it?
I honestly, I feel so over this as, a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
You look at, how many women are running businesses and contributing to the economy, just, it almost belittles our contribution to have one day where we, celebrate, um, and I feel like my tone on this has shifted quite drastically, I'd say over, the past 5-10 years. I used to be the one, on all the panels and wearing, the pink power suit and really embracing it. I'm just so over the one day of, celebrating women's contribution.
It's really interesting that you share that perspective because I have the same. And you and I don't think we talked about this before,
No.
but yeah, I do believe in what it represents, but I don't want another event that we have to go to or an event that we as women have to organize.
Yeah.
I want equal pay. I want women's health care and research. I want childcare and parental leave and all the things that will actually make a difference in women's lives and women business and the economy and in the world. And it feels a little bit like it's become, actually, a friend of mine said, pink and champagne day.
Mhm.
And that's not what it's supposed to be about to me. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. I've always had challenging things have always happened around International Women's Day for me for some reason. So yeah, it was just kind of a low key one for me. I did go to one event, or before International Women's Day, where Erin Ashley from Erin Wellness, who's a friend of mine and entrepreneur here, put on a screening of the M Factor 2
Yeah,
and
you brought your
researching
son
menopause.
to it, I saw.
Yeah, I brought my son to the M2, which is perimenopause. And I'm kind of getting to that age where I need to start thinking about that and learning about that. And that was a nice event to go to, but it was just before International Women's Day, and it was very talking about the subject matter, that the underfunded women's health research and how perimenopause, even since 5 years ago, was extremely new and unknown to many physicians. And so it was a fascinating film and a really great panel discussion after. I'd love to talk about today, before we get into our rundown stories, the idea of being rich. What does it mean to be rich to you? I'd love to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I have 2 recent examples from this past week
Mm.
that I think beautifully highlight, exactly what this means to me. The first one is I had to, spend some money to fix my car. There were, a few, things that had worn down. It was giving me some issues, and it cost me $2,500 to fix. I think for the first time, truly in my life, it's not that that doesn't hurt, it still hurts to spend that money, but it didn't affect the rest of my life. I was able to make that payment without, really feeling it. So that was definitely a feeling of, rich, where I can take care of what I need to take care of. If something happens that is, an emergency, or you need to dip into your rainy day fund, that's what it's there for. So to be able to cover expenses that come up and feel confident in the rest of your financial plan. And then the other experience was my oldest daughter is applying for some spring and summer part time jobs. And I am so blessed to have such an awesome network of people around me. And so not only are people, reaching out to me asking about her, she's has her own network that she's building, but in talking to one of our kind of connections, people in our network who own a business, they said, we'll put her resume on the top of the pile because she's a Slivinski. And I know there's a lot of questions that I ask myself around that. I'm like, like, is that how I want her to get her first
Right.
real job? Like she's had some small work, but first real job. And is that anyway, there's a lot of kind of like Nepo babiness about that. But
Yeah.
I think encapsulated in like that experience is your name and your reputation and how you treat people
Yes.
extends to those within your circle, and you can actually help people that you care about. So she's still going to have to earn her own way, but that was just a really nice reminder of like the power of your network around you and
Yeah.
what your reputation can do for others.
Yes. That's I love that so much. It's like rich in relationship, rich in
Mhm.
reputation.
Mhm.
That's great.
Yeah,
Cool.
what is it for you?
I feel like yours were quite deep. Mine, for me being rich, I mean, first of all, having the ability to pick up my son from daycare or later from school every day if I want to, but then also having the choice to not,
Mm,
like having option and choice. Because to me, being rich, that feeling of richness is feeling supported and then
mhm,
also having freedom and flexibility to make choice. So that's a big one for me. And then convenience, being able to get my hair blown out once a week and feel comfortable with that spend. Grocery delivery or meal prep or those types of things that just make my day-to-day life a little bit easier. And then experiences. So just you talking about the trip that you just did to Toronto and being able to take your girls, like treating my loved ones and friends to experiences and surprises, like surprising and delighting the people that I love in my life. So being able to host a dinner or secretly upgrade someone's, ticket if we're going on a trip or those types of things, be able to treat the people in my life who I love through experience.
yeah. Oh, I love that.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, so should we get into our rundown stories for today?
Let's go.
Okay, cool. So the first one, big news, is that Kindred raised $125 million to fund the future of home swapping. So Kindred actually came on my radar not that long ago. I think it was probably 6 weeks ago, where I first read about this members only home exchange network. It was founded in 2021 by two female founders. It's a 100% female founder team. Hell yeah. Coming off of International Women's Day, this is the stuff I want to hear. And their names are Justine Palevsky and Tasneem Amina. They're based in SF. Kindred, it facilitates home swapping either directly. So if I had a home, have a home in Vancouver and I wanted to travel to London for a few weeks, you can literally just do like the Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet, the holiday swap with someone.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you can swap through credits by hosting people and getting credits and then being able to go to a different location. So really interesting thing happening here when you compare it to Airbnb and the frustrations and learnings from their model. The platform Kindred, they reported a network of hundreds of thousands of homes across 150 cities. Forbes exclusively reported that they announced their $125 million in new funding. It includes a previously unannounced 40 million Series B round. This amount, like they already did a Series B, but didn't
Mm,
do an announcement around it, which I thought was really
mhm.
interesting. And I'd love your thoughts on that. The round was co-led by by NEA and Dylan Field. Have you heard the name Dylan Field before?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a CEO of Figma. And then there was 85 million Series C as a part of this 125 that was led by Index Ventures. So, even thinking about this from an alternative to Airbnb, because I think there's a lot of people who were either returning to hotels or getting really frustrated with the cost and the additional fees. I know you're an Airbnb host. So I think this will be awesome to hear your perspective on. But essentially, it looks like this is a more cost-effective alternative because you're putting your home up as well and getting something in exchange for that. There's no like nightly rate for staying.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's fees and then some minor costs as well for your putting your own home up. But yeah, let's just like, what do you think, especially your perspective of having been an Airbnb host?
Yeah. So a few things. Airbnb obviously facing, and same as Verbo, a lot of short-term rental regulations. So
Yes.
I think this is very smart in that it should hopefully circumvent a lot of those rules because
Mhm.
and again, you are paying still, but it's a pretty straight swap, and you're just paying cleaning service fees. So I think that is a key differentiator and really positions them well for being in the market. Compared to other platforms like Home Exchange, I think would be the most comparable, where it is like guest points or straight swaps. This is a nicer experience aesthetically. There seem to be pickier of like which homes they put on. And at Home Exchange, a lot of your messages go unanswered, and you're also getting messages that, may not be a fit. So I think Kindred has solved for some of those pieces.
Mm.
Is there enough upside in this business model specifically? I'm not sure. And I think the reason why Airbnb specifically was so successful, especially in like the post COVID kind of heyday, was people were really able to make bank renting out their homes. So we first started renting out our property in the Fraser Valley almost 10 years ago. First tried it on Airbnb when we had a longer trip to Europe and tried it just to see like can we cover some of our costs? Can we maybe like have a slightly nicer experience while we're there from some of the additional income? And it just, like, it lit on fire, and we were not literally, thank God, but the money kept coming in, the house was booked, and we had such lovely experiences with the guests, like, I'd say, like, 90% of guests were phenomenal, and so what we ended up doing out of that is renting out the home full-time on Airbnb, um, we were able to leverage that to buy another property. And so when you look at kind of like the ladder of how you build your net worth, Airbnb was such an important tool during that time. And you saw, and I know there's a lot of criticism for people who own multiple Airbnb properties, but it was kind of one of those unlock ways to build wealth at a time where, salaries weren't going up and the cost of living is what it is and continues to rise. So that's where I think Airbnb worked is people who were looking for that, in addition to maybe some swaps of their principal residence and traveling abroad. Kindred doesn't offer that because there's just the guest point swap. And yes, you can get rich on experiences traveling with guest points, but if you're looking for the financial payoff, that's missing. I would not be surprised if one day they do incorporate like more Airbnb Verbo style pure payment model, and maybe this is just a way to get around some of the regulations. So that's what I would be watching for. I think unless they do that, their pool of homes is going to be capped. There also is a risk in renting out your place. Like, if it is your principal residence especially, you may have, your personal items that you need to put away, or there's still a risk, right? Like, even if your closets are locked and whatnot, you're letting someone else into your home. And so what percentage of people are going to be comfortable with that and see the trade-off of a slightly reduced vacation home as worth it? I don't think that necessarily Kindred is going to be that, like, to the moon, but
Hmm.
we'll see. One to watch.
Yeah, I think that from, like, a user perspective, Airbnb started with this mission and a part of their brand being, like, experience living in someone's home in a different city, and there was much
Mhm.
more of a, like, heartfelt feeling behind it, and then to your point, what we see is because people are business-oriented and wanna make a profit and be able to grow their net worth, it became this a different kind of tool for people, and, my partner and I went to Mexico City in October, and we Airbnb'd. I've Airbnb'd in tons of cities around the world, and we got there, and it was, like, almost the entire apartment building was all Airbnbs. It was beautiful. It's, like, a really nice little studio that we rented, but you get there, and there's signage from, like, the rental company, and there's no actual person, like, the same person that you can speak to, and it's a management company. There's pretty decor on the shelves, and then I, like, look at it, and there's these books that are just, like,
Yeah, you
fake
told me the
display
story.
books. Yeah, and they're just blank in the back. And so there's that personal touch, that warm, fuzzy feeling of like actually experiencing what it's like to live in a different city, to me has gone by the wayside in many Airbnb properties around the world. It's just different than it used to be. And because people are smart and want to make a profit and be able to purchase another home with the revenues. But in that, it just becomes a different beast. And I think that in a lot of what we've been talking about in, consumer and brand culture, people are looking for those experiences again and more of that like heartfelt back to, I don't want to say the basics, but like the in real life feelings and I don't know how else to describe it. Like the more grassroots or grounded in experiences. And it's just really interesting to me that Kindred has created the model this way and been very clear about like you can't go on the platform unless you have a home to swap, member only type model to leverage that current sentiment among consumers right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also part of why we saw people flocking back to hotels, right? Like,
Yes.
not only did, like, the Airbnb supply go down after some of the regulations, but it was this fatigue with the, like, "You don't know what you're gonna get, and, I'm paying all this money, and I still have to put the sheets in the wash at the end of my stay."
Yes, or take out the garbage.
Yeah, that people wanted, the hotel experience, and so we saw
Yeah.
that wave shift. Yeah, I mean, yeah, basically the question to me is, like, is Kindred enough of a solve? Or is it
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
different enough from what's currently on the market to be able to really break through? And, yeah, my gut is like, "No, I don't think so."
It's so true what you said about hotel, and I felt that sentiment myself, is that because also the pricing for Airbnbs, like in the beginning, again, it was a more affordable option than hotels. And then with all
Mhm.
of the fees and the cleaning and to your point, like having to take out the trash, put the sheets in the laundry, sort the recycling before you leave, and then not have this more like personalized experience when you're there. All the benefits of the original Airbnbs, in many cases, not all, was removed. It used to be the homeowner like would leave you baked goods when you got there and like a fresh jam and I'm sure you probably did these things yourself, but a lot of them didn't anymore. And so there was just that connection that was missing. You didn't feel like you were living, like you were experiencing what it was like to live in that city.
Mhm.
You were experiencing what it was like to rent a rental property in that city.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see if they can continue to, like, leverage that. If consumer sentiment, stays the same over a period of time. I don't know how to think about the fact that they didn't announce their Series B and then are kind of rolling it up into the announcement for the 125. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense, especially with the, just, like, how political short-term rentals are around the world. You look at all the regulations around Airbnb and Vrbo. So I think kind of flying under the radar a little bit, makes sense from a media perspective. Also, when your goal, as it seems like Kindred's is quite aesthetically pleasing, curated collections of homes, you're not gonna get that kind of customer base through mass market media. So more specialized ads, more specialized maybe like media outreach, just like focused on the concept as opposed to the raise makes sense. I
Mhm,
don't think that like from a just like media approach standpoint, announcing a raise does much more than like build buzz in the investor community. And maybe they were like, hey, we have what we need to do this. And now we're going to kind of hunker down and build.
mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I like that, like, authenticity, which that's how it comes across to me.
Okay, so rich girl POV on this. I think that, we're talking a lot about how people aren't buying stuff as much as they're buying experiences. And so with Kindred, this is about access over ownership. It turned into opportunity. So you're cashing in on that ability. People are fatigued possibly with Airbnb. So this is an opportunity for them, like the fees, the regulatory considerations, the rules, the headaches. Like it made Airbnb feel more like a job, whereas Kindred feels much more community and less commerce because there's no actual exchange of money in that way outside of fees, et cetera. We talked about the regulatory advantage possibly, and these are female founders, and this is a big race. This 100% women-led team with $125 million. So that's not just about the money, that's like a cultural signal, and it shows investor confidence, especially some of the names that they got on board.
Yeah. No, good point.
Okay, so when you were in New York recently, you were at the toy fair, I think it was, right? And you were
Mhm.
getting a lot of information, a lot of chatter about Frida. the
Yeah.
baby and parent product company. So that's our second story. I'd love to hear kind of what you heard on the ground there and what happened.
So yeah, so I was at the New York Toy Fair, and often, when I go into these conferences, I'm like, hey, what's the news that might be interesting for this group of people? So baby and mom care company Frida was recently under fire for what turned out to be old packaging and old social media posts, about 5 years old, that really took a, I'd say, like, offside slash inappropriate marketing line for baby products. And so a lot of the criticism was that it was like quite sexualized messaging and sometimes quite sexualized imagery that was being used to sell these baby and postpartum care products. And again, when these came out and the packaging came out and the post came out, there wasn't this uproar 5 years ago. Kind of like seemed to fly under the radar, but now the culture and a lot of the cultural conversations that we're having about specifically the sexualization of children has made this seem completely inappropriate. It wasn't necessarily resonating that same way at the time, or
Yeah.
just somehow flew under the radar. And so when I raised even the name Frida to anyone at Toy Fair, it was this unanimous, like, what were they thinking? This is so offside. I expected a bit of a mixed bag, but everyone I talked to about it was just truly like appalled that this
Mhm.
got to print and got to, through all the rounds of marketing approvals. So it really made me think, we can dive into, like, is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate? I know that that conversation has been had, ad nauseum online. But what it made me think about is, how does a brand survive, and have the longevity for 10, 15 plus years with everything that they've ever shared and posted and printed living in perpetuity? So you often think about this in, like, young people now who are going to be running for office. Everything that they're doing online and sharing online is going to live forever and follow them forever. Well, brands are being faced with the same thing. And cultural norms change. What is acceptable, what is not acceptable, changes drastically over the course of, 15, 20 years. And so if you're wanting to build a brand that has that kind of longevity, I don't know what the answer is. Apart from, and I'll lean into this angle of it, is like apologizing and
Mhm.
owning the hurt and the mistakes quickly,
Yeah.
which Frida didn't do. So people were offended, people were upset, and they were posting online, calling on Frida. And I know there's a petition to boycott the company as a result. And from Frida, like the company, silence. And it was actually a competing brand, Safety First, who also has products in the baby care space, that came out with this kind of tongue in cheek social post saying, we'll stay in our lane taking care of our babies. So they were the first company to actually, like, address this. And it wasn't until about a week later, I think almost 10 days later, actually, that Frida came out with, like, truly a roundabout, very watered down version of an apology in a social media post. So I think that was, like, quite offside.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's fascinating how when culture shifts and when there's certain subjects in the media, how things can be resurfaced and look completely different under the lens of today than it did 5 years ago. I mean, I think it's really important to remember that Frida's the company that did an entire campaign about breast milk ice cream, right? Like, there's a shock value to a lot of their
Yeah.
marketing and a little bit of a disgust thing that they play on in many different ways. They also the breast milk ice cream campaign, they had milk trucks going around with, like, breast milk labeled on the side of it, and it left people going, "Is it really breast milk?" Like, and people would try and eat the ice cream, and spoiler alert, it wasn't real breast milk, but Frida let people have that play in their imagination for a long time to create the chatter online and to kind of play with that feeling of disgust and wonder and, like, are they really doing this? They also recently launched a campaign about show us your breasts, and they had big boob floats and parades, I think, and going down the
Yeah, it was
street,
like
and it
New
was about
Orleans. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it was about desexualizing breasts because they're not just for the male gaze, they're for actually, like, feeding and raising our children. So I think it's important for people to remember, like, the context of the kind of marketing this company has done in the past. And this is the unearthing, to your point, of 5-year-old posts that do not look good today. The thing with Frida, from my perspective, is the products are good. Like, they're so good. And that's why postpartum moms share, recommend, purchase. Like, I had tons of Frida products for postpartum as a result. So you're totally right. The way that they handled it, like to have your competitor comment online before you do is really a huge loss for them. The reaction that they gave to media, I saw emails to media in
Mhm.
response to some of this firestorm that happened online, was very dismissive and was very much like, we're Frida. We've always had marketing that pushes the boundaries and that, makes people talk. And they didn't apologize, like you said, until I think it was like 10 days later and after the safety first posts. So it was not handled well. They really could have managed this better. In my personal opinion, there's a number of these taglines on packages that like are just right on the boundary, and then others with imagery that are just like, what? How could you? Like, what were you thinking even then, before the context of today? Um, the company said that they're going to get rid of some of these slogans and messaging moving forward. I think it's going to end here. Will it impact their bottom line long term? I don't think so. There is this petition to hold Frida Baby accountable. At the time that I looked at it last week, there was 28,000 people who signed. Like, that's a drop in the bucket.
Mhm.
Do you think they're going to see the long-term impacts of this to the bottom line?
I mean, it's interesting. Their line was retiring legacy assets. It was like a very almost like AI-driven PR statement that they came out with. I don't think it'll negatively impact their actual bottom line. No, I don't.
Mhm.
I think a lot of what they've done is like leaning into this like all press is good press.
Mm,
But, to our conversation from earlier, what they really did wrong was not addressing how hurt and upset people were.
mhm.
And that's your responsibility, especially as a brand, in like this intimate care space and baby care
Yeah.
space. It's like
Yeah.
at least address that people are hurt and upset. It was almost like a mansplaining apology, which like that just
Yes.
like sat so off with me. And I think, you look at how brands build trust and keep trust, that's really important, and that was their biggest misstep. Also, there was, like you almost felt gaslit by how they approached it. First, before they even said anything, they quietly deleted some old posts, and so I found myself thinking, like, "Am I crazy? Did I, like, see this? Did I miss this? Like, what happened?" And then they addressed it after the fact, and I think that's not really an okay way to approach customers.
Mhm. Okay, so give us your summary of your rich girl POV on this.
Yeah, so, okay, my take is, like, the original marketing materials were offside, like, they feel gross, I don't like it, I think that was too far and wrong, but really what's more troubling is their reaction. When Frida's customers were upset, it took them about 10 days to actually address the controversy in any way, and even their apology was, like, this very veiled, almost like mansplaining apology, which didn't really sit well. So I think the brand has lost trust and needs to
Yeah.
continue to regain that. And I think that really is like the lesson out of this is it's less so don't take risks and don't push the boundaries and don't try things with marketing because brands do and sometimes they get it wrong. But when you are hearing directly from your customer base that it's not landing and even worse, it's upsetting people to address that. And the bigger question to think about is when everything's living online for decades, how do brands adjust that and think about like the changing social norms when their assets are going to live online forever and be measured against that changing norm? What the answer to that is, I don't know, apart from addressing your customers in the present day when you're getting real feedback from them.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think it's really important to respond quickly and authentically and wholeheartedly to feedback like this from your customer base. And do I think that it's going to hurt their bottom line over time? No, but it would be really disappointing if they didn't use this as an opportunity to take a look at their marketing approach and practices and vetting process to make sure to avoid this in the future, that they don't cross that line and earn back and continue to build the trust of their customers.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it is an opportunity. And if they had
Yeah,
used it as such, brands spend so many millions of dollars trying to get people to talk about them. Here, the world is talking about you for a short time. And the opportunity to actually speak to that customer base was really squandered.
absolutely. For our last rundown story of the day, I wanted to talk about the rise in experiential retail. If any of our listeners are from the Lower Mainland, they're probably familiar with Nordstrom. shutting down the huge space, 40,000 square foot, 4-story store in downtown Vancouver, shutting down and Nordstrom leaving Canada. And Aritzia is actually opening a flagship experience store in Pacific Center at that former site. The opening is currently planned for 2027, and this huge location is going to feature things like curated shopping areas, custom art, this casual yet elevated dining concept in store. And so I'm noticing a lot of more immersive, personalized, and high-touch experiences for customers being hosted by brands, whether in permanent retail spaces or pop-up type environments. So we're seeing this throwback to marketing before digital and before social media. It's this retail model where brands are offering these experiences that go beyond just like the traditional shopping experience, right? So they're transforming physical locations into actual destinations that draw people in and create that engagement and connection, not just transactions. It's really important to look at this in the context of the internet and digital marketing and paid ads just feeling more dense and more crowded with influencers on social media, everything feeling like it's just selling, selling, selling. This sentiment, again, of creating real in-life experiences that people are going to naturally and authentically share versus just like, getting a product drop and opening unboxings on social. So there's tons of other examples of this. One that I thought was really cool was Netflix House.
Yep.
So Netflix is actually creating these permanent physical experiences. It kind of reminds me of like the Disney experience or Universal Studios, where people can explore interactive attractions essentially inspired by Netflix shows and Netflix movies. So you can actually walk through worlds like the Stranger Things world or from the show Wednesday, which I'm a fan of, dine in, these themed restaurants and get all these really cool photo ops with some of the stories and the characters and the worlds that you love. They're actually opening in Vegas also in 2027, and it's going to be this permanent evolution of Netflix's experiential strategy. I've seen others more pop-up type. Alo Yoga has these real-world experiences, like yoga studios, wellness activations that they do. Are you seeing this everywhere as well?
Yeah, so definitely amongst like current clients, prospective clients, the ask for experiential activations has gone up.
Mhm.
And people are willing to spend, honestly, it's like dream budgets, like what we've been trying to get them to spend for the past 5, 10 years. Now, all of a sudden, people are realizing, oh, brand activations in real life actually hit all of this demographic that we want, payoff that we want. I see it as almost like digital promised the moon and sometimes is able to deliver, but really it's like a shift now in away from digital and more towards this experiential marketing, which is just so fun to execute. You mentioned Aritzia. Part of Aritzia's success was creating stores that really served like a flagship location before
Mhm.
they needed to be a flagship location. So you look at just like how beautiful and interactive the experience was in any Aritzia store. And that's what made them stand out. And you look at the valuation of the company and like the stock price now. I think I bought Aritzia at like $18, and I should have held on to it for longer than I did because the company is doing well, truly in part because of this in-store experience.
Mhm.
I think it makes sense. I love to see it. I think it's like some of the most interesting like projects to work on from a
Yeah.
PR marketing perspective is these like real life. I mean, it's almost like I tell my kids, it's like, hey, the best like VR experience is like in real life. Like go
Yeah.
talk to your friends, see them. It's like, oh, they're right there. They're in real life.
Yeah.
The other example of this that I think of is Rec Room by Cineplex.
Mm.
So similar concept where they have these like pop-up locations. Also part of the trend of like going back to the 90s, going back to a simpler time. So I think it's all of those things coming together. And I know you touched on like the shareability of it, but that
Mhm.
also is a big piece. So you create an experience, even if it is for your, top 50 customers or like 50 customers within your core demographic, and they're sharing authentically online what the experience is like. They're getting ready. Maybe there's some photo opportunities, some, interactive pieces that they're capturing. And then that's spread more widely. So as part of a larger marketing strategy, it makes sense.
Mhm.
And it's neat to see brands really
Mhm.
capitalizing on it.
Mhm. I actually was listening to a podcast earlier this week and around the big streaming platforms. Okay, I'm gonna get the stat probably wrong, but Disney is still one of the best, like, highest revenue producing, most profitable of the platforms. 75%, I think, ish, of their profits come from in real life experiences. Disney Cruise Line, still the
Mhm,
theme parks. And so these big, like, huge international entertainment conglomerates are getting a lot of their revenue and profitability from these in real life experiences. And it's interesting when you look at it from, like, the perspective of people not going to the theater so much
mhm.
anymore. We want to watch everything be released in our homes, and scratching that itch in a different place and, like, interacting with these shows that aren't available at the theaters in real life through theme park type experiences or activations. It's really in alignment with a lot of the trends that we're seeing from a marketing, brand, and PR perspective across various industries.
Well, and you also look at who is the target demographic for a lot of these in real life activations. It's your like high schoolers to maybe university age often. And that's the group that they continue to have disposable income um, no matter what's going on in the economy because they're often not paying for housing and they're, maybe living with their parents. Food is free, the fridge of mom and dad. And so they have money to spend and they want to spend it spending time with their friends and having these experiences. So, um, it almost is like a bit of a recession proof pocket in some ways.
So, summarizing our rich girl POV on this, we've talked about this before a few times already in our episodes together, but in real life is becoming the new luxury. In a world where we're constantly scrolling, brands that are creating real, memorable, and authentic moments are winning attention and loyalty and getting shared so much more on the digital platforms. Physical space is a strategic advantage. They're not just a point where transactions happen. And then this throwback theme that we're seeing to, like, human level marketing. Experiential retail, it isn't just nostalgia, it's all purposeful attention hacking for these brands. Okay, so to wrap up our episode together, let's chat about what brands or businesses we're each following. So who's on your radar right now, Ada?
Yeah, so Mr. Beast is getting into financial services, acquiring a company called Step. And actually, when I saw this come up on my home feed, I mentioned it to my 10-year-old, and she's like, "Yeah, mom, I already know." And it's it's a platform for kids to hold, spend their money, also invest, and
Okay.
trade crypto potentially down the line is how
No.
he's teased it. So, um, a lot of like immediate red flags go up for me with this because are kids old enough to be playing and dabbling in this space? Absolutely not. I know there's regulations, but what's scary about it is this gamification of investing that can be really dangerous for kids and really goes into like all age groups. And this is what happens when you feel like you can't win, like the investing system, the financial system feels rigged against you. And so people are looking for quick wins. And kids, especially, are just so susceptible to falling into some of these traps. Mr. Beast obviously is a very well known and successful YouTuber. Not only does he have his YouTube following, but the Beast games. So in real life, to really like piggyback off of what we were just talking about. He's done these in real life experiences, kind of game show style, really um, looking at gambling in a lot of ways. Like, would you take this money now or would you play this game and win more? And that's a very dangerous approach when it's applied to investing.
Mr. Beast was not on my radar until as of late. I heard his name somewhere, and then I was actually at the hair salon getting my hair washed, and on the TV like that they have above when you're lying back, there was that game that he had. And there was, I think, like 1,000 people in one room together, this crazy studio that they set up. People were falling through the floor. So who's his demographic typically? Like, for people who don't know who he is, like me, how did he get a start? A YouTube creator focused on what?
Yeah, so really like a lot of crazy stunts. Like he started like I'm going to burn a Lamborghini or I'm going to crush
Uh,
something. And that's how really like the main demographic is kids. That's how they got hooked on this concept. So he would do just like insane stunts, often very destructive. So that's what got the eyeballs. Like he would just ruin things and crush things and break things. Um, Kids like elementary through high school age,
okay.
a lot of different spin-off businesses. Like I don't know if you've heard of Feastables, Mr. Beast chocolate bars.
No.
Those are super popular in the same kind of age group. Kids were bringing them to school. So this is like a chocolate bar, but Mr. Beast branded. So he has a lot of sway and appeal with the younger demographic,
Mm-hmm.
which is, why he's getting into, I guess, other ways to market and profit off of this age group. But this group has more disposable income, more like stable disposable income than a lot of us adults who are, plugged into like the actual economy. So there's a lot of dangers in my mind of him marketing, investing in kind of these get rich quick schemes
Mm-hmm.
to kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of get rich quick, the brand or business I'm watching is called Polymarket. So Polymarket is actually the real money market platform based on prediction. So users bet on the likelihood of a real world event happening. There's cultural things, like, for example, the Super Bowl halftime show or sports, but also politics, like geopolitical stuff, finance, and these wild hypotheticals on the platform. One of them, for example, is will Jesus return before 2027? Yes or no? And so it's essentially crowd-based forecasting meets gambling. Similar to your example, the bets are settled in crypto. What's been fascinating for me to see, and Polymarket is being mentioned more and more on all of the news platforms and business podcasts that I listen to, is in addition to people using it as a betting tool, they're also using it as a business tool because you can see what people are thinking about
Mhm.
and what culturally is happening. Like people are referencing it almost as a crowdsourced tool, even if they're not betting on it. But this brings up so many concerns, regulatory concerns. Insider trading is a huge one. There's also the gambling addiction consideration when you can bet on everything, like from, what shoes will this basketball player wear to this game, or who's going to join Bad Bunny on stage at the Super Bowl. There's a huge consideration when it comes to like addiction and gambling addiction. There's been some crazy bets. Someone won huge money on Bad Bunny's halftime performance at the Super Bowl. And there was parameters, I believe, and this one person, this one individual won like 15 of the 17 betting points that they could bet on, including that Lady Gaga would make an appearance, which completely came out of left
Mm,
field.
mhm.
Um, Pun not intended. But like it makes you wonder, do they have insider information, right? They
Yeah.
must have to know that Lady Gaga's going to go on stage, to know that, there's going to be like grass dancing in the field or whatever these other crazy betting points where they must have been like a dancer's cousin's, brother or something to have this kind of information. That it's kind of the wild, wild west still. There's tons of things that are being looked at right now, and it is on government and regulatory bodies' radars. But also, morally, this is a consideration. How do we feel about someone winning potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on the demise of a country? For example, people are betting on, the midterm elections even going to happen on time in the States. Who's going to be the next like Democratic and Republican candidate during the 2028 US election? When is Iran's regime going to fall, and when? When is Israel going to bomb, this oil field? And people are betting on these things. And so just morally, like, are we comfortable so far? It looks like we are comfortable as a society on people winning big bucks based on this stuff. So I've been watching Polymarket. I've been seeing it come up more and more. It really brings up a lot of things for me from like a business, culture, and just kind of like geopolitical and political standpoint. The user demographic is fascinating. There is a massive growth in this platform in 2024 during the US election. 74% of the users currently are male, and a lot of them
Yep.
are younger. with backgrounds already in things like crypto and digital asset trading. And many, and this is sort of anecdotally, many are pro-Trump and MAGA. So yeah, you wonder if people who have information about some of these things are in there and betting and making money off it as well.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing to your point about, are we comfortable betting on things like the demise of a country? I think what happens when we're getting a lot of the information about sports in the same platform as we're getting it
Yes. Yeah.
about wars, and the same as we're getting it about celebrities, is this desensitization to what's happening in the world. Like, you open your Instagram feed and it's a whole variety of things, some of which are very serious and scary, and some of which are very trivial. So I think there's something that happens in our brain when we're seeing this vast variety of like seriousness of things in the same platform.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's a largely male, younger male demographic doesn't surprise me at all. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a group that's really vulnerable to gambling and these like day trading, almost like schemes.
Mm-hmm.
Men, especially because of this, like stereotypically provider instinct, feel that they can't win in today's society and economy. I mean, none of us feel like they can, like we can win, but men especially are typically susceptible to these schemes online. And it's like, how do you beat the system? How do you hack the system? How do you make more money than you're, reasonably able to in today's economy?
Mm-hmm.
And so that group is susceptible to online gambling. Often they are, like you say, trading on or betting on sports teams, making their, little drafts anyway. So I think there's a lot that's really dangerous about it if you're using it as a way to try and actually make money.
Mm-hmm.
As a game, gambling can be fun as a game, but what's really concerning is if people are making these bets and sometimes maybe even getting like involved to make things happen in
Mm-hmm.
order to win the bets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just both of these brands that we're watching have a lot of similarities, I think, in that way. And I hope that we'll see things kind of settle down a bit on that front with regulation and with government bodies stepping in to manage it a bit. But this is not the last that we're going to hear of Polymarket, and the fact that Mr. Beast is getting into financial services as well is just a little bit. It's kind of mind blowing. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, it's like if you feel like you can't get ahead in today's economy,
Mm-hmm.
there's, this unrest and it
Yes.
manifests itself in different ways. Physically, it's like one way in like demonstrations and protests, etc. But the other way is through some of these vehicles that can be, quite dangerous, really, when
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. I definitely am leaving with lots to think about. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to subscribe across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and share this with someone who might find these topics fascinating. Thanks so much for being with me today, Ada.
Thanks, Kate.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Branded Assets. Power looks better when women are in the room, so thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, follow the show, share it with a friend, and join us on Instagram at Branded Assets. We're just getting started. I'm Kate Bouchard. See you next time.